Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags and Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys our first impressions of the new releases from Mushroomhead and Hammerfall. So, two new releases out today, and let's talk about the first one that I checked out, which was Call the Devil by Mushroomhead. We were both concerned going into this album because of the singles that were released. We did react to two of them. The first one I thought was pretty good, and you weren't like huge on it, and the second one we both kind of thought, what's going on with this band? They kind of don't really sound like themselves anymore, and in the first half of this album I kind of thought, oh, they might not really have it anymore, and I was concerned because, you know, they either sound like they're kind of trying to just reuse stuff, or it just doesn't have the personality. When I say reuse stuff, there's one song in particular, the first track, Eye to Eye. Maybe you'd have to hear the songs back to back to know, but if you remember the song 1200, which is the first track off Save Your Sorrow.
Yeah, great song.
It kind of sounds like 1200 Junior. Like, as I'm listening to this, the riff kind of reminds me of 1200, but it doesn't have the same intensity, it doesn't have the fast kick, it doesn't have what makes 1200 like super, super crazy.
So what does it have?
It has a similar kind of riff.
Oh, okay.
You know, there's part
I'd have to hear it again with that in mind. It's one of those things.
Yeah, if you hear them back to back, you'll kind of think like, oh, okay, I see like the comparison. It kind of feels like 1200 Junior.
Okay.
You know, it sounds more like Mushroomhead than Prepackaged, which was the second single we checked out and reacted to. And I still kind of feel like that song just doesn't really have the personality that I know Mushroomhead for, you know? It's just not really there. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say I really like Steve's voice. I liked it on the last record, and I think in general he has a nice voice. He's not Jeffrey Nothing, no, but I still think he fits the role well enough, and out of the three singers, he's definitely the highlight. I enjoy the songs where he is featured, and I found that in the second half of this album, it got way better. Like, I feel like not only were there more songs featuring him, but I feel like they got more interesting. I feel like they got a bit more poetic, because I know Mushroomhead has a lot of that in their artistry, a lot of poetry,
yeah,
and the poetic sound, and even with the lyrics. And I found that in the second half, more of that was coming out. And even the harder parts in the second half, they felt better because they had all this interesting stuff around it. So, you know, you look at a song like Decomposition, which is in the first half, that was mainly my favorite track that was in the first half. And I like that it was focused on Steve, and I like the melodies as well.
That's literally right in the middle of the album.
It's kind of like, yeah, middle.
It's track 7 out of 13, so.
Okay, I think I mixed it up with another one. Yeah, Emptiness, that's the one in the first half that I liked.
Okay.
That had that. But yeah, Decomposition is where it started to heat up, and it kind of felt like they leaned a little bit hard on the evil circus vibe with that song.
I got that too, Dark Carnival.
Like, kind of like, sounds like something you'd hear in like Hell of a Boss or something, which, I mean, that's cool, but like, that's just kind of what came to my head.
I felt like it was something you'd hear out of like Avatar. Like, it sounds like something Avatar would write.
I can see that.
I
could
sound like
see that.
Avatar, but they would play that kind of song and have that kind of ambience.
I could see that, but yeah, so that song is where it really started to get good, you know, like from there, and then after that, Grand Gesture, that was a really nice song. It kind of felt weird that it came right after Decomposition, which kind of has a similar vibe. I kind of felt like after Decomposition, you'd think they would have done like a harder song, but they didn't, so they kind of just rode this wave for longer than I was expecting. But I feel like Hallucination, that's a title. That was a good song, and it has some of the vibe I'm looking for with the harder music from Mushroomhead. Mm-hmm. And I liked how Jackie sounded on this as well. I feel like in the first half, her vocals really didn't do much for me, but I feel like it was better here. But it was really like, from Decomposition onwards is where this album really started to be more enjoyable. So it's like, it makes me think like, well, is this the kind of album where like you should just probably cut a few tracks? Because I feel like in that second half, they have the juice there. But in the first half, it just didn't feel like they were much of themselves anymore.
Yeah, you know what? I can agree with the fact that the second half of the album definitely felt more familiar. It felt more like home, but not quite there yet. Yeah, there wasn't a lot in the first half of the album that I did enjoy. There was stuff I noticed, like the song We Don't Care, I felt had this slight southern twang to it at certain parts, which I thought was kind of unique. But again, that doesn't remind me of Mushroomhead. To me, that doesn't sound like Mushroomhead. I felt like there was a bit of jazziness in the song Emptiness. Again, I'm like, that's cool, it's a cool element, but it feels like every new thing they try takes them a step further from what they should be sounding like. And I can appreciate them doing new things and doing different things, but it might be unfair to be like, oh, this doesn't sound like this doesn't sound like this, but when you have a band like this that's gone through so many lineup changes, and they went from 2 vocalists to 3 vocalists, and none of the vocalists are the original vocalists. It's like
2 to 3 to 2 to 3.
It gets so convoluted, and the sound changes so much. So you got guys like Steve, who yes, he does a passable Jeffrey Nothing style voice. Is it there? It's not quite there, but it's passable. I feel like if he was singing old Mushroomhead songs, it would sound fine in his voice. The biggest takeaway from me was probably Grand Gesture, the song, because I felt like rhythmically it had some callbacks to Never Let It Go. And Never Let It Go is one of my favorite Mushroomhead songs.
Great song.
And yeah, this is one of the ones this is one of the songs that does feel like a Mushroomhead song, right? This is one of the ones that it kind of brought me back home and went, okay, now we're grounded again, and we're back to what we know. But that was basically it. The rest of the album, like there's some good stuff here and there, like the song Torn in Two. I thought that was a good song, but it should be the band should be called something else, right? The Fall in Line, I felt the same way. I mean, there's a few songs like that. Hallucination, I thought was also a great song. But again, I don't feel like it deserves the name Mushroomhead because it just doesn't sound like that.
It's weird because it's like when a band is evolving, obviously they're going to kind of change their personality, but it's hard to weigh that against kind of like the soul that they have versus, okay, they're evolving into this, but it's like they lose the soul. So it's a difficult game to play.
Evolving is one thing, but changing members and continuing on is a different thing. It's 2 different things.
I guess.
Is this an evolution or is this just a change, right? And again, maybe we're being unfair, and sometimes people are unfair when they judge new albums like this, especially when there's a lot of lineup changes and things like that in a band. But at the end of the day, there's a certain type of sound and feeling you want from a band, especially if one you're familiar with that you've been listening to for 20 plus years. And if you don't get that, it's going to be disappointing. So I'm not going to say that I didn't like it. I thought it was a fine album, and I definitely think it's got highlights in there. But maybe it just needs more spins, right? Maybe we're listening with too critical of an ear. Maybe we're listening with too biased of an ear, right?
Yeah, because we're thinking like we like old Mushroomhead.
There's a lot of bias in here, exactly. And we're not strangers to this band as far as even newer stuff goes. We've been reviewing them for a while on this channel now.
I mean, we reviewed Double X back in like 2017, but then we also reviewed
That's an older album. Even the newer.
We reviewed A Wonderful Life back when it came out. You gave it a toe tag, if I recall correctly.
I might have. I can't remember exactly, but the newer albums have tended to grow on us, I think. After a first impression, we might have been like, whatever, but they've tended to grow on us. So, all we can do is see what happens with this. That's it.
Yeah. Well, moving on, let's talk about Avenge the Fallen by Hammerfall. They dropped an album called Hammer of Dawn in 2022. And I remember checking this album out late into the year, I think, with our year-end considerations when we were checking out tons of different albums. I actually liked it quite a bit. I thought, hey, man, and I think I may have even mentioned to you, like, yo, check out that Hammerfall album. It was actually really good. So I don't really remember much of what it sounded like because that was 2 years ago. But I remember enjoying it. I remember seeing the album and being like, yes, I remember that, and I remember enjoying that. So I got excited to put this record on. I'm thinking, yeah, Hammerfall, power metal, let's go. But I kind of felt like it was a very average power metal album. It didn't really feel like it had the super duper spark that comes when you listen to some kick-ass power metal. Kind of felt like it was good, but it wasn't really kicking into that high gear in terms of its content. But the little drum intro that happens in the end justifies. I thought that was pretty neat. That's just a little thing that I noted. But a lot of the album, I kind of felt like it was just kind of coasting. Hero to All was one that I enjoyed. Hope Springs Eternal was a good kind of mid-album, like ballad break kind of track. And then I was kind of thinking to myself, I hope Burn It Down like does exactly what the name implies, because you got this nice sounding, break, soft song, You Need to Come Back with the fire. And I feel like Burn It Down has some of the power. I feel like some of it kind of had some of the spark. Another song I made a note about was Rise of Evil. I dialed the number 666, but no reply. Is a line in the song, and I had to look that up because I heard that and thought, what? What did he just say? I don't know. I just thought it was a bit of a goofy lyric just from hearing that. But there's a nice solo at the end of that track. Like when that solo came on, I'm like, okay, this is nice. This is kind of like the energy I expect from power metal. But overall, this album doesn't feel bad. It just kind of feels very average. Like it's fine. It's like a fine, but it's not a go-to if I want to put on some power metal and really feel the vibe of that. I wouldn't really choose this record.
I can kind of see where you're coming from. I think, when you say average, I can agree with that to an extent, but I don't like using that word for this. I feel like that word's a little bit too harsh for this. I feel like it's better than that. I feel like fundamentally this is great power metal. I feel like it ticks all the right boxes if you're looking for power metal. Does it outshine anything else? Maybe not. Does it, go the step forward and wow you in any certain way? Maybe not. But it does have some highlights, and I think those are primarily in the guitars. I think there's a lot of really good riffs on here. The solos are actually really nice on this album. A couple highlight songs with good solos would be tracks number 3, which is Freedom. Track number 8, Capture the Dream. And as TV Fish mentioned, Rise of Evil also has a great solo on it as well. All 3 of those are good songs. I think The End Justifies, which is track number 2, is also a great song, has some great forward-moving energy, some good double bass and stuff like that. There's a lot of things going for it, but as TV Fish said, it does feel average. I just feel bad saying that because that seems like a bit of a knock, but I actually did enjoy it. One thing I'm going to mention though about Hammerfall, and I thought this was interesting to find this out, is they have over 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify. To put that into perspective, Mushroomhead has 620,000. To put it into even more perspective, Lorna Shore has 930,000.
Really?
Hammerfall has more monthly listeners than Lorna Shore.
I mean, these guys, they've been around since the late 90s. So they do have a lot of time, and they probably have something that really blew up for them.
That's entirely possible, but even Slaughter to Prevail, they have about the same as Slaughter to Prevail. Just over 1 million. I feel like that's just crazy. That's a crazy stat, because you never hear people talking about Hammerfall.
I usually don't. No.
Right? You never do. We're involved in the community as far as, YouTube, we're on social media, Reddit, I'm on Reddit, subs about metal and stuff like that. I never hear people talking about Hammerfall. Sorry, I just don't. I mean, I know the band, they've been around for a while, but that shocked me. That's all I'm saying, right? Over 1 million monthly listeners, that shocked me. Good for them, right? But I think that also goes back to one of the first things I said about them on this video, and that's that fundamentally they know where it's at, right? So if you are a power metal fan and you want power metal, you really can't go wrong with this. You really can't go wrong. And a band that's been around for as long as they have been, and I don't exactly know when, they might be an 80s band maybe, or even a 90s band, I'm not exactly sure when they...
If you look at just their earliest stuff on Spotify, it's 1997, so...
Okay, so they're not that old as I thought maybe, but even still, when you've been around for that long, and that's almost 30 years, you're gonna start, maybe running out of ideas, all right? And then you're just gonna stick to the regular formulas, stick to what's tried and true, basically, and you're gonna get albums like this that are just fundamentally good, right? And solid from cover to cover, but nothing real special, no real spark to it.
Well, with that being said, we did discuss a little bit. We made the decision that for this forthcoming week, we are going to review Call the Devil by Mushroomhead. So we're going to spin that album over and over and over and over, and we will be back next week to give you guys our full and final review of that album. Anyways, guys, that is all we got for you today. Remember to like the video if you liked, and tell us in the comments below, out of these 2 new releases, which did you like more? Were you into the Mushroomhead album? Were you into the Hammerfall album? Or were you into something else that came out today? We'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
I'm Wild Self.
We'll see you guys later.